Welcome back to SledgeHammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Today, I am so lucky to be joined by the awesome and super busy Jake Red. Jake, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, no problem. It truly is an honor. For those of you that don't know, like I said, Jake is extremely busy, shooting 19 films over the last 2 years, including The Central Authority, something we've been talking about a whole lot lately, as well as Devil's Junction, Handy Dandy's Revenge, Immigrant Mother, 39 Melrose Place. So you have literally been nonstop for the last couple of years. What's that been like for you?
Oh, I work hard to be that way, and I love what I do. So it's been an adventure. Every project I have done has almost been a step up from the last, which is kind of a fun way to have a career where everything you're moving forward, and if not forward, lateral, and that's the way I like to think about things. But it is busy, when I'm not working, I'm preparing. So.
Well, like you just said, it's always good to push yourself. You said each role feels bigger than the last. Something I want to talk about while we're talking about that, the Central Authority. This is something very unique. I can't wait till we get distribution details so we can talk to everybody and really talk. I was lucky enough to be able to see an early advanced screener copy, and I'm absolutely in love with it. I love how you guys shot it. I love everything about it. What was it like for you filming this film?
It was a lot of fun. There's so much talent throughout that thing, and the way I like to work as an artist or a creator is be given guidelines, but not to be put in a box. And there were no boxes to be put in that movie. I think I can feel pretty assured in saying that. And just such a talented cast, such a talented crew. Kristen and Armin and Matt and. You just can't say enough about how much those people worked hard to make something happen during a difficult time. So it's fun. I think it'll do well, and it's at the very least, it's super interesting, and everyone in it's really talented. So it works, and I didn't think it was going to work. I'll be as transparent as possible. You call my reps and. I bitched and moaned a little bit because I'm like, no way does a movie get shot like this and it cuts together. And fuck, man, that's how good Armin is, and Kristen, and that thing cuts together and it works. And that's more than some of the films I've been in, I can say.
Right. And it's one of those things where as you're watching, you can really appreciate, like you said, with Armin, with the editing, you can appreciate all the hard work that he did. But you also, like you said, something I talked to Kristen and Dana about is they kind of gave you guys a guideline and let you work on your own, kind of do your own thing. And
Yeah.
I think as an artist, that's something that you would appreciate. Like you just said, not being put in a box.
Yeah, and shoot, man, yeah, I'm gonna get shot by Dana, but yeah, Dana was an integral part in that. She kind of gave me the outline of sorts of who I was playing in that. And, being from where I'm from in Missouri, it wasn't really hard. I had lots of people to pull off of for who my character is in that. And it was just fun, just good people. There's so many times in this industry, at this level, you're working on a lot of films, and like you said, I've worked on a lot of films, and just not very often do you get to work with such a great group with zero bad eggs. And like, truthfully, it's happened to me 3 times, 4 times, and there's always something that kind of makes a project sour, whether it's someone not doing their job or preparing, but there's not many projects that you can say 100% through and through. Everyone just worked their ass off to get it done. And Central Authority was that. And so it's a beautiful thing.
And I think it really comes off in the finished product. I'm lucky 2 of my really good friends are actually part of the film. That's how I got hooked up with you guys, Michael Colomb and Charlie Chudabala, 2 really good friends of mine. So
great
to be able to watch my friends do this and then make everybody, I'm with you. I'm going to knock on wood real quick. I've been able to work. This is almost episode 100 of the podcast, and I haven't had one shitty person yet, man. Like, everybody's been super kind, super awesome. I've kept in contact with a bunch of them. So it's been a whole lot of fun. And I'm so honored, especially after watching Central Authority, because I'm a fan of your guys's. It's one of those things where I watched the film, I'm a fan, and now I get to talk to you guys about it a little bit. And the only thing that's a bummer to me is it's not released yet, so we can't really go too deep into it because I don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But when Kristen gets the distribution details, we're going to try to put together a whole nother Zoom call with the cast so we can kind of start promoting a little bit through SledgeHammer Horror as well, getting the distribution details out there to get this into as many hands as we possibly can. Because this is one of those films that I just feel like it's good. Like you said, it's going to work when people watch it and they realize what you guys did going through to make this film and how it turned out. There's parts where I laughed hysterically, and there's parts where you're just real fear. The thought of what's
it's
going
not
on.
I mean, listen, there's in horror, I find there's so, and I've gotten to work on firstly, let me start here. I want to give a shout out to Michael Colomb and all 6 of his Instagram names he likes me to follow. But other than that, I love you, Michael. But horror is such an interesting thing where I'm always a fan of saying, listen, horror, think of it as a wheel. It's not hard to make the wheel go, but there's a lot of ways to screw it up. And why try to reinvent the wheel? Now, that's what kind of my trepidation on this thing was because we're reinventing a wheel. But when I watched it, I was like, holy cow, we got a wheel that works here. And I didn't, I respect all those people, and I knew it would work to a certain extent. I didn't know how well it would work, though. And it blew me away.
Mm-hmm. And I'm honored that you guys took the time out to come and talk to me about this a little bit. While we're starting to really veer into that horror section, though, I do want to get into the reason why you were nice enough to come here. Before we do, you're right. Michael Colomb, I love you to death. You're a great dude. Thank you. He's one of the kindest, most genuine guys I've ever met. So it's really cool to call him a friend. But sir, we are here to talk about the first horror movie you watched and what got you rolling in the genre. And your first horror movie was
It. Oh. Well, so I was thinking about that today. Yeah, and there you go. And like I said over email, I had to rewatch it because my first occurrence with it was, when I was a boy and I was walking by a family television because it was running on a cable network, and I saw that clown in a sewer, and I don't know how old I was at the time, but hated clowns ever since. Didn't trust them, didn't like being around them. They freaked me out. And so when you asked that question, what it was just a simple, easy it. And then I almost had to go back and rewatch it and be like, why was it? And it holds up. And truthfully, I'm a fan of it. I have not watched the remake of it with with the Skarsgård as the new It clown. And I'm a huge fan of his, so I need to watch it. But there's still a bit of me that just doesn't, I don't love clowns, and sitting down and watching for an hour and 45 was tough to do it when I rewatched it this time, and to do a newer version where I know the FX is going to be better and just scare the poop out of me. I'm not sure I'm going to saddle up for that.
Right. And you're talking about clowns, and I want to bring this up. I actually have the picture right here of Tim Curry's Pennywise. Now, when you look at just the face, obviously, this doesn't look like a killer clown. And that's what I appreciate about Tim Curry's Pennywise in comparison to Bill Skarsgård's, because I am a huge fan of the remake as well. I think that they nailed the remake. They took a lot from the book, but they also stayed true to a lot of what the TV miniseries did. But what I do like about this version more, actually, is Tim Curry's Pennywise is approachable. As a child that isn't afraid of clowns. He doesn't look like this monster. He really is the John Wayne Gacy, the influence for the film.
Yeah.
And he's this lovable, likable clown that you would approach, but he's a monster underneath. And that's what the Tim Curry one did for me. If I seen Bill Skarsgård's clown, whether I was a kid or a grown-ass adult, I'd be booking it the other way no matter what. But Tim Curry's is it seems like he's approachable, and that's what scares me, because that to me is more realistically how you're going to get those kids.
And I think that's I want to watch it now because it's such an astute way to look at it. And it's something I play a lot of bad guys. And if you can play a bad guy that's approachable and somewhat redeemable, whatever it is, you're going to have fans because of that, as at least the watchers. And I always go back to, it's super well known, but for some reason, when you watch The Dark Knight, you're rooting for Heath Ledger. you're not rooting for Batman. And to the end, you're like, you want Heath to win. And it's like, that's how talented he was. He could get you to a place like that. But anytime you can do that with a bad guy, which he does in it, it's just, I mean, it's talent just showing through, and direction and stuff. Because I would say, I think the Skarsgård family as a whole might be one of the most talented in Hollywood.
Yeah.
But, you know, you never know where a director is going to push you and which way they want to go with it. And commercially, the scarier the clown, the better.
And what you just said too is also true, because what people don't remember is that this Stephen King's It was never released in cinema. You know, this was a TV miniseries, and, you know, just like the Langoliers, Rose Red, and it just took off because it was so well done. The acting was phenomenal. Everything about this is absolutely brilliant. But the new one, the remake, I don't want to sell it short, because same thing. The acting's phenomenal. The child actors are perfect. Skarsgård does these things with his eyes, and it's not effects when you watch it. It's him, practical. And he's terrifying. Like, Skarsgård absolutely nails it. So I have an appreciation for both for different reasons. I look at them like Child's Play and the Child's Play remake. I have a deep appreciation for both of them for completely different reasons. I'm glad they're not the exact same film. I don't want to see someone else playing Charles Lee Ray. I don't mind seeing someone else play Chucky, but I don't want to see someone else play Charles Lee Ray. That's Brad Dourif for me forever. And that's how I feel about this. I love how they reinvented the characters. It was kind of hard for me to really accept Skarsgård, but, you know, watching, you know, like Finn Wolfhard play Richie, even Bill Hader playing adult Richie, I think that it's one of the best performances I've seen in a horror movie. It Chapter 2, Bill Hader. It made me appreciate that man as an actor.
He's fantastic.
Not just a comedian. He nails this role, man. He makes you laugh. He makes you cry. He's perfect for the role, man. If when you do eventually end up watching these, please text me and let me know what you think.
Yeah,
I'm super curious to know. Now back to the original though. Which scene affected you the most?
I think you got to go with Georgie's death. Child death.
Yeah.
I don't know. It hits. You know, I don't have kids of my own. I have a niece, and I know you were talking about you have a child, and if not more than that, I don't know. But anytime a child gets brought into it, you just can't help but just like feel it worse. Because it's, I mean, like, you know, I'll probably get crucified by some of my friends, but if the bimbo gets slashed, who cares? It's a slasher. But when a child goes down, you feel it, you know?
I get you. Well, and it's funny how that feels different with age as well. Like you were just saying, I am a parent. I have 3 children. I have a boy and 2 girls. And as a kid, you watch like a couple examples. Pet Sematary, The Exorcist. You watch these films and you look at them from a child's point of view. That could be me. That could be one of my friends. But then you become an adult. And like you said, you don't have to be a parent. You could be an aunt, an uncle. You could have friends. It doesn't matter. You look at it more parentally, even if you're not a parent. And you look at what the parents go through in these scenes rather than the kids.
Yeah.
And like The Exorcist is a big one for me that completely changed when I got older. You know, when you're younger, you're like, oh, that poor girl. But now that I'm older, I'm like, oh, that poor girl and her poor mother. You know, like she's trying so hard and she's so helpless.
I think it's such a good topic to bring up, because even in more worldly things, we'll call them, that are getting more press, because I think horror kind of gets stuck in this niche sometimes that not everyone watches it. But I mean, and sorry, I'm a cursor, so it just kind of comes out, but like, who the fuck didn't watch 13 Reasons Why, you know?
Right.
Or no, not that, Stranger Things.
Yeah.
And the mother in that, not knowing where her boy was in season 1 and going nuts, and everyone thinking she's nuts. It's like, no, she's a mom. You know, I know my mom, and like, she doesn't hear from me for 8 hours, and I'm 20 years old. She doesn't hear from me for 8 hours, and she's calling the police, you know?
Yeah.
So
one scene from Stranger Things you're talking about with the mother that really, and this is something that just captivated me the first time I seen it, and it's something I always go back to, when they go to the morgue to identify Will's body, and she's smoking, and she's like, let me see his birthmark. He has a birthmark on his side, and they're all like, and then she walks out, she's like, I don't know what that is, but it's not my son. and it's true. I don't care how perfect of a fake doll you make. A parent is gonna know their kid, all the little marks, everything. We're gonna know if that's really our baby or not. And that's something I think that the Duffer Brothers absolutely nailed with Winona Ryder and Stranger Things. That was brilliant. I'm glad you brought that up.
No, I mean, it's so true. It makes me, I got some birthmarks, some places it'd be scary for my mom to know where they are, but I'm sure she does, you know?
She changed those diapers, bro. She knows what's up.
Yeah, exactly.
So when we're back to it, I hate saying favorite because it's so dark, but these next two are favorite questions that are kind of dark. From it, what is your favorite scene from that film?
I think it still has to be the scene. I mean, it leads into the Georgie's death, but the scene with it's just so beautiful and cinematic with the paper boat going down in the rain and the brother kind of seeing him off right before that for his grand adventure. And you're like, you're headed down a path that you almost feel like it's, you know, you're with the Tin Man going to a great, you know, the yellow brick road, and then you get led to a sewer with a killer clown in it. It just,
the Wicked Witch.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I'm like I said, I still can't walk by sewers in a certain way without kind of looking down. I got a dog that I don't let close to sewers. You know, like you never know. You never know. And
well, it's funny
so
how that's another reason. What's
because
that?
I think the sewer community, like, it's not that far fetched for someone to be in a sewer.
Right.
You know? So,
I mean, how many movies growing up did we see where people were in the sewer? You got It. I mean, you got the fucking Ninja Turtles. Their asses were in the sewer. I mean, that's Jason Takes Manhattan. That whole sewer scene in that. I mean, that's something that I've always associated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The sewer.
So I agree with you. That sewer scene is something that is always, especially, you know, we grew up around the same time period in the, you know, late 80s, early 90s. Back then, you know, the sewer, that was the most disgusting, filthy, dirty place you could possibly put into a film. So for us growing up, we associate that with the dirty, nasty, disgusting things that live there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, so that's gotta be my favorite scene because I just think it's so iconic and polarizing. And also, like, cinematography is, I think, one of the greatest things in this world. And it can be a shit movie, but if the cinematography is good, I'll stick around. You know,
Sure.
like, man, who thought of that shot? You know, who thought to track that there? And when you're on more and more sets, you start to hear those conversations and how they formulate, and you can really acknowledge when you're working with a great cinematographer, and then again when you're watching something who's a great cinematographer, and I love that stuff.
Oh, me too. Another one for me like that is the score. I think a score can absolutely make or break a movie. And we were just talking the other day because obviously, like I said, I got a 12-year-old, 8-year-old, and a newborn. So for Halloween, there's 3 movies we always watch traditionally. It's Hocus Pocus, Casper, and Halloween 3: Season of the Witch. Those are our Halloween movies. And Casper the Friendly Ghost from 1999 has one of the best scores I've ever heard in my entire life. If you watch, I bought the soundtrack. Like, that's how well that score is done, and it fits that film. I know it's a kid's movie, whatever, but man, the score really enhances that film so much throughout the whole film, and it's so polarizing to just listen to that score. It's so great.
I'll have to go check because I mean, kids movie. I think Tarzan has one of the best scores I've ever heard.
Yeah.
You know, when he's with his mama in the tree. I mean, some of the best songs I've ever heard were in that Tarzan, and, you know, recreated for that. But kids movies aside, I think I need to go rewatch that and hear it, because score is, you're dead on. I'm thinking of a movie specifically, and I just worked with a director who, his last movie, the cinematography and the score on it were just out of this world. And that really threw me into wanting to work with him and making it happen on this next one, because you just know, if you trust your own work, you know someone on the other side is doing their side. And, you know, when you're leaving set, this thing's going to be cut beautifully and put a great score behind it. And those aren't easy things to do.
No. And look at this. There are some films in this world. I'm going to name 3 right off the top of my head where the score is bigger than the film. Look at Halloween. Everybody knows that. Boo-doo-doo-boo-doo. Everybody knows that. Jaws. Anytime you're in the water, you do. And then Star Wars. Who does not know the Imperial March? You have people that'll say, "Oh, I'm not into Star Wars," but they hear that Imperial March. This is that Star Wars song. Like, that's how important some of these scores can be to a film success. You put those things together. For every single time, I'm a musician as well. Every single time I sit at a piano, the first thing I do is the Halloween score, because I know that the people around me are going to know exactly what the hell I'm playing every time. And then it goes right from that to Jack's Mannequin's Dark Blue. Every time I go right from that to that. So now the other dark question I got to ask you about your favorite kill. And we don't have to say favorite, but the one that stuck with you the most. I'm pretty sure I know which one it is, but I always got to ask anyway, the kill that affected you the most.
Yeah, I feel redundant, but Georgie right there again, he takes the Triple Crown here. But I mean, there's other kills in that are good, but I think that's the greatest. And it's because of in so much of the best work I see and stuff I try to emulate, and I'm getting there day by day, but they take you from a place where you just don't think it's going somewhere, other than if you're going to sit in a horror movie and someone's going to die. But I mean, just seeing that paper boat slowly flow down up against the curb and back, and it just kind of brings me back to childhood, because I lived at the bottom of the hill, and we do shit like that when it rained and try to do things like that, and it brings you back to things like that, and it just feels so personal.
What people don't realize too, going back to, this was made for TV. This was on fucking CBS or ABC on a Sunday night. You sit down to watch chapter 1 on a Sunday night, and in the first 13 minutes of the film, you watch 2 kids die. And we're talking taboo at this point, because you got the little girl at the very beginning that dies in the laundry, which you don't really see much of. But then you got Mike coming and finding Georgie's picture, which time travels you back to Georgie's death. So within the first, I think it's 13 to 16 minutes of the film, you have 2 child deaths. And that, like I said, that just, especially at that time, that didn't happen. I mean, you look at Jason Part 6, Jason Lives. Jason gets electrocuted and comes back as Frank and Jason. And he goes into that little girl's room and he sees her in the bed. And then he gets up and walks away. Like, even Jason doesn't kill little kids, man. But then you got Pennywise, does not give any fucks. He's much like the honey badger. He don't give a fuck. And he just goes in there. He kills 2 kids in the first, let's just say, 15 minutes of the film. And you're watching this on fucking ABC with your family with a fucking Hershey bar and a bucket of popcorn.
Well, and that's the thing for me, was I walked by it, and it was the clown in the sewer, that shot that's almost iconic, and you see his face, and I couldn't look at clowns the same since then. But then when I rewatched it, being a little bit older now, not much, but when I rewatched it, I started thinking, I'm like, clowns are the Santa Claus of parties. They're the Easter Bunny. They're in the same echelon as all that shit. And so as you're thinking as more of a parental role for someone, and you're like, well, fuck, I don't want my kids around clowns, or sewers. And I come from like a dog dad role, and so it's like, if I don't want my dog around clowns, I can't imagine what I'd be like with kids,
Right.
So,
and it's awesome, man. Like, it's one of those things where no matter what, especially nowadays, it's funny, because when I was young, and I'm sure when you were young, and you grew up in the Midwest too, you're right in the central Midwest. I'm in Michigan. So, growing up in the Midwest, it was nothing for us to get out of school, come home, watch Power Rangers, do our homework, and then go outside and play in the woods for 3 hours on end. But you knew when you heard mom scream, get back to the house. I would never let my kids just go out and play in the woods for hours on end now.
I remember, so I grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, and we had a creek behind us, and I'd do that with my friends. And one time we found a little 380 pistol in the creek. that someone left there. And my parents were like, we'll just throw it in the trash. Like, what the fuck? Like, what would happen? I mean, the cops would show up now, the reporters. Back then, it was like, just throw it in the trash. It's like, okay.
Yeah, just like you got rid of the murder weapon for somebody back then.
Yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, so much shit like that, like, I always kid that I'm like, man, homeschooling doesn't sound bad because kids are mean. And I probably had 5 good teachers in my life, you know, and you start thinking about that. And then, God, I got to watch out for clowns too in sewers, you know,
On top of everything else, because that's another thing about this movie that really kind of gets overlooked because of Pennywise. But Henry Bowers is just as much a villain in this movie as Pennywise, and some could argue that the character of Henry Bowers is scarier because that everybody had in Henry Bowers growing up.
Yeah.
You know, we all had that bully, maybe not obviously to the extent of what Henry Bowers was, but we all had a Henry Bowers growing up. So that's
sure.
another part of this film that not a lot of people talk about because obviously Pennywise eclipses what Henry Bowers is. I get that, but Stephen King writing in the character of Henry Bowers, who could have been the villain in any of his movies, as almost a sub-villain to Pennywise, is just speaks to the brilliance of this film as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's those B, C, D storylines are really what embed these things to make people watch and rewatch, and you know, it's totally different, but it's like was it? No, Billy Madison, the O'Doyles. You know, they're like a C or D or fucking F storyline, but you're like, you hate the O'Doyles, and when they run off a cliff, you're like, woo, you know.
O'Doyle, I got a feeling something really bad's gonna happen to your whole family. But right now I gotta study. I love that shit, dude. So we did talk about your first horror movie, which was the TV version of It. Something I have to ask you now that I never let anybody know I'm gonna ask them. I gotta go scream on you. What's your favorite scary movie? What is your favorite horror movie? See, and I love that reaction. That's why when I include questions that I ask, I never put that one on there because I want you on the spot. Well, I want a genuine answer.
I don't want to be super mainstream, but I love what people are doing right now that really fucks with what's going on in the world. And I think the easiest one to do would be Get Out. And messing with, and so I'm working on some ideas myself that kind of mess with, you know, either gender roles, social roles, race, you know, things like that are like modern day horrors and taking an extreme look at them. I think they're
much like Night of the Living Dead. I mean, look at Night of the Living Dead. That's a total movie about race that they took to the extreme, you know? So, I mean, I can absolutely appreciate you saying that because I would love to see you work on something like that. Get Out. While we're talking about Get Out, have you seen the alternate ending to that movie?
No.
We're going to talk about, I don't want to talk about it on here because I don't want to spoil anything, but when we're done, I want to tell you about it. It's something that I think you'll appreciate. Now with these, we always end these, my friend, the same way. I always end them with a skull count. We're going back to the TV miniseries of It, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best. You can use half and quarter skulls. What would you rank Stephen King's It, 0 to 5 skulls?
Sub question on horror.
On how it affected you.
Oh, okay. I mean, that's a 5 skull.
It's funny how the first horror movie always sticks with us.
Yeah.
It's something that it stays with us forever because that's when you go from watching An American Tale to it drastically changes the way you look at things.
Yeah. No, I think it's got to be because I mean, you hear the trepidation in my tone already with clowns and sewers. Yeah, no, for sure.
So I want you guys to make sure you're clicking down here in the description. I got all of Jake's links down here. Make sure you're following him on social media, giving him a shout out. I want to thank you for joining me. Don't go anywhere. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, thank you so much. Keep talking horror. Stay what you are. And we'll talk to you guys soon.